Hello and welcome to the channel Touching Stories. Thank you for taking the time to be here, a place where we share emotional stories about loyalty, love, and the extraordinary bond between humans and their four-legged companions. If you enjoy healing stories, emotional journeys, and moments that bring tears of joy, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to our channel to join us for more heartwarming tales. And now let's step into today's story, a journey of solitude, hope, and a quiet miracle named Rex. In a peaceful suburb hidden behind a fence draped in bougainvillea stood a small house where Mrs. Lay, a 70-year-old woman, lived alone. Ever since her son moved to Canada and gradually lost contact due to both distance and emotional gaps, the house grew quiet, missing the familiar sounds of laughter and conversation. She never blamed him. She simply accepted it as something natural in life. Children grow up and have their own lives. Each morning she rose before the sun. With a warm cup of tea in hand, her weary eyes gazed at the garden with quiet reflection. She cared for each flower bed, meticulously pulling out weeds as if that small sense of order could somehow fill the emptiness in her heart. On rainy afternoons, she would sit by the window and write letters by hand to her son, letters filled with love, longing, and a yearning to hold her once little part again. But those letters were never sent. They stayed quietly in an old drawer, like unspoken feelings sealed away. Her life moved forward in such silent days, one after another, until one weekend afternoon, she happened upon a pet rescue fair in town. She hadn't intended to adopt a pet. She only stopped by because she heard the sound of children laughing, which stirred old memories in her heart. And then her eyes met a creature sitting quietly in the corner of a cage. Unlike the other dogs, jumping excitedly and barking for attention, this one stayed still, calm, composed, and silent. It didn't beg for notice, but his gaze was deep, as though it had weathered many storms. That was Rex, a Malinois dog who had once served in a rescue team during earthquakes, digging through rubble to find survivors. But now Rex was too old to serve, turned away by those looking for a young, energetic pet. The shelter staff shared a bit of Rex's past and said, "No one wants him. He's old now." Mrs. Lay didn't respond immediately. She just looked at Rex, and something inside her stirred. In his quiet gaze, she saw herself. A soul who had once been needed, once been strong for someone, but was now simply waiting. "Would you help me with the garden?" she whispered gently to Rex, as if speaking not just to the dog, but to her loneliness. And that was how her quiet life began to change, through a pair of brown eyes, a steady breath, and an old heart that still had so much warmth to give. His name is Rex. He used to be a rescue dog during earthquakes in central Vietnam. He saved 3 people trapped beneath the rubble, said the staff member, as Mrs. Lee stood still in front of the old iron cage. There was pride in his voice, but also sadness in his eyes. "He's smart and disciplined, but he's aged. The team retired him. Most visitors want small, cute, healthy dogs. No one ever notices Rex." Mrs. Lee said nothing. She just stared into Rex's deep brown eyes. Not bright, not eager, but holding something profound. A quiet strength, wisdom, and perhaps loneliness. The way he sat there, not trying to be noticed, made her feel as if she was looking into a mirror. Rex slowly raised his head, sensing her presence. He didn't bark, didn't whine, only tilted his head slightly, and that gentle gesture softened her heart. "You want to adopt him?" the staff asked, surprised. She gave a soft nod. "I think he and I could keep each other company." That afternoon, she brought Rex home in her old tricycle cart, the same one her neighbors jokingly called Mrs. Lee's flower wagon because she used it to bring home plants from the market. When they saw her bringing home such a large dog, the neighbors whispered, "That dog's huge. How will she handle it? What if she falls? What if it bites her?" Even her distant cousin called, voice stern, "You're too old. Why bring yourself more trouble?" But Mrs. Lee just smiled faintly. She didn't argue, because in her heart this wasn't trouble. She wasn't taking on a burden. She was welcoming a life, a soul that knew what it meant to be needed. And then forgotten. When Rex stepped into her garden, for the first time he didn't sniff around or bark. He walked slowly, looked up at the small wooden house draped in flowers, and then looked at her. A gaze not of questioning but of trust. And so 2 old souls, once deemed past their purpose, found each other. A woman, an old dog, and something new quietly blooming between them. In a small house on the edge of town, a new presence quietly entered. Not a relative, not a curious neighbor, but a large Malinois dog with deep brown eyes and a calm, steady gait, like that of a retired soldier. His name was Rex, At first, Mrs. Lee wasn't used to him. No one in the village kept such big dogs, and certainly no one at her age, nearing the twilight of life, would dare adopt an animal that once served in a rescue unit. People gossiped. Some chuckled softly, but she didn't mind, even though she didn't fully understand what had led her to this decision. Deep down, she felt it was something that needed to be done. Rex wasn't the type to play or frolic. He didn't bark unnecessarily, nor did he make a mess, but his behaviors were peculiar, strange enough to make Mrs. Lee feel both puzzled and slightly unnerved. Every night after she had gone to bed, Rex never lay at the foot of the bed where she had prepared a space for him. Instead, he positioned himself right in front of the bedroom door, head facing outward, eyes never fully shut. He didn't sleep deeply. At the slightest noise, he would lift his head, listen, and only then settle back down again. Each morning when Mrs. Lee opened the door to step into her garden, Rex would always go out first. He'd scan the yard with sharp eyes before calmly stepping aside as if signaling, "It's safe, you can go now." At first it annoyed her. What a strange dog. More like a guard than a pet. She mumbled once watching Rex circle the house again at dusk. Once while she was cooking soup, a metal spoon accidentally fell onto the tiled floor. The sharp clang startled Rex, and he came rushing in, positioning himself between her and the fallen spoon ears, upright eyes scanning the room. "It's just a spoon. Silly," she sighed, soothing him like a startled child. But then, something changed. One night she awoke from a dream, the faint sound of a child's giggle, the scuff of tiny slippers circling the dining table. She opened her eyes, heart aching with nostalgia, and as her gaze moved toward the door, she saw Rex lying there as always. Only this time she didn't feel annoyed. She looked at him for a long while and exhaled, not in exasperation but in quiet relief. For the first time in years she felt safe, not from burglars, but from the kind of dreams that never receive an answer, from the silence of loneliness that no one else could see. The next day, while making tea and dropping a few leaves into the pot, a memory washed over her, her son Ben. When he was little, he had a dog named Mitt, a small golden mutt, loyal and sweet, who used to sleep under his bed. Once Mitt got lost, Ben cried for 2 straight days. When they finally found the dog at a distant market, the boy hugged him tightly, sobbing, "Don't leave me again." Okay. Remembering that moment made her eyes sting. Since Ben had moved to Canada and gradually stopped calling, she always told the neighbors, "He's just busy. Work is a lot over there." But deep down, she knew the greatest distance wasn't between Vietnam and Canada. It was between 2 hearts that no longer knew how to speak to one another. Now there was another dog, bigger, older, calmer. But when she looked at Rex, she saw glimpses of that little boy again. The same eyes that cared, the same silent patience, the same way of sitting by her side waiting for her to speak, even if it was just murmuring about a flower blooming in the yard. One quiet afternoon, she did something unusual. She opened a drawer and pulled out a letter she had written to her son but never sent. She read it silently at first, then read it aloud. She didn't add anything new, just read, as if to let the wind carry the words, or maybe to send them to a pair of ears that were quietly listening. Rex lay beside her head, resting on her leg, eyes half closed. She reached the final line. "My son, I miss you so much. If you could just say one word to let me know you're all right, my heart would be at peace." Rex stirred gently as if understanding something, and at that moment Mrs. Lee, a woman who once believed that her remaining days were only for waiting peacefully to leave, felt something new take root inside her. Hope. Not hoping that her son would suddenly call. Not hope that the past could return, but a hope that, even with just herself and a boy, the days ahead could still have meaning. That night, for the first time, she took out a small mat and placed it right next to her bed. "Rex," she said softly, "come lie here. It'll be warmer." Rex didn't hesitate. He walked over, curled up on the mat, and let out a long, peaceful breath. She reached out and gently stroked his head. "You know," she whispered, "it's been a long time since I've talked to anyone this much." Rex didn't answer. He only wagged his tail faintly in the dark. But for her, that was the warmest reply in the world. That night, the sky was pitch black. The evening rain had left behind the scent of damp earth and a heavy stillness that blanketed the quiet suburban neighborhood. In a small wooden house tucked beneath a bougainvillea trellis, Mrs. Lee had gone to bed early, having just finished steeping a pot of lotus tea. Her eyes slowly closed and sleep came gently with the sound of wind rustling outside the porch. But Rex did not sleep. The large Malinois dog lay beside the bedroom door, his ears finely tuned to even the faintest sounds. Though retired from the rescue unit, Rex's instincts never dulled. And tonight those instincts would save the life of the woman who had taken him in when the world had seemingly forgotten him. Not far away in an abandoned house at the end of the street, three men were whispering in the dark. Recently released from prison, they were no strangers to theft, deception, and violence. Now they had their sights set on an easy target, an older woman living alone, no husband, no children nearby, no cameras, no close neighbors. That place is easy, Pickings said, the leanest of the three, holding a rough sketch in his hand. I've been watching her all week. She lives alone. Never locks the back shed. What about the dog? Another asked cautiously. Just an old mutt, big. Yeah, but useless. Trust me, follow the plan and we're golden. They agreed on midnight, 12:15 a.m. The power was cut. The porch lights went dark and shadows swallowed the space around the house. The shed door rattled faintly in the night. One figure crept forward, stepping quietly onto the damp cement. Another followed closely behind, gripping a small crowbar. Rex had been awake. He growled low in his throat and moved toward the back door. His steps slow but alert. When the first intruder stepped into the kitchen, foot landing on the cold tile floor, Rex lunged like a lightning bolt. The sound of impact was sickening. The man crashed to the floor, the crowbar clattering away. Rex, fueled by training and loyalty, sank his jaws into the attacker's arm. The one holding the weapon, and the man screamed in pain. The other two panicked. They fled. One crashed into a fallen bicycle in the yard, the loud clatter echoing into the still night, drawing attention from a neighbor 2 houses down. Mr. Dewey, a widower who lived with his grandson, caught a glimpse of someone sprinting across his front yard. Without hesitation, he called the police. Inside, Rex still held the intruder down. The man, strong and wild with desperation, struggled violently. He managed to pull a small knife from his pocket and swung at Rex. In a flash of steel, the blade slashed deep into the dog's hind leg. Rex howled in pain, but he didn't back down. He leaped back momentarily, then lunged again, this time using the full force of his trained, powerful body, and slammed the man to the floor a second time. The sound of police sirens pierced the night within minutes. When officers arrived, the man Rex had taken down was lying motionless, arm bleeding, face ghost white. The other two were found and arrested several blocks away after residents spotted their suspicious behavior. Inside the house, officers saw a frail older woman in her nightgown trembling as she knelt beside a large dog, panting heavily, blood seeping from his hind leg. Rex, she whispered, her voice breaking, eyes wide with worry. You're hurt. A young officer knelt to inspect him. We'll get a vet here right away. This dog, he's incredible. That night, Rex was rushed to an emergency animal clinic. His wound required stitches and monitoring over several days. Mrs. Lee refused to leave his side until the vet finally said, he'll be okay. News of the foiled break-in and the brave Malinois who stopped it spread quickly across local social media. People called Rex the hero of the suburbs. Strangers came to visit, thanked Mrs. Lee, and snapped photos with Rex as he recovered. And Mrs. Lee, every time she looked into those steady, dark brown eyes, she remembered the moment Rex protected Horsevich without hesitation, with everything he had, even his blood. You're not just my dog, she whispers into his ear the day he came home. You're my friend, my guardian, the greatest gift old age has brought me. Rex wagged his tail gently. His gaze remained calm, quiet, just like the first day they met, but now filled with something unspoken trust. It was a night of fate. And from that moment on, no one ever called Mrs. Lee the lonely old woman again. Because beside her always was a loyal soul, silent but unshakable, named Rex. Week had passed since the break-in, but the air in the quiet suburban neighborhood still buzzed with whispers. People didn't just talk about the captured thieves, they spoke most about Rex, the old dog once believed to be past his prime. A retired rescue dog who had fearlessly risked his life to protect his elderly owner from danger. A photo of Rex lying at Mrs. Lee's feet, his injured leg bandaged. Was calm and steady, had been shared thousands of times on social media. Beneath it, a simple yet powerful caption read, "Retired from service, not from loyalty." The news spread fast, crossing not just towns but borders. And one quiet morning in a small apartment in Toronto, more than 13,000 kilometers from Vietnam, a young man sat scrolling through the headlines on his phone as he usually did. But this time a name stopped him cold. An attempted burglary in Vietnam, foiled by an aging Malinois. The owner, a 70-year-old woman named Lo. His heart skipped a beat. Though there was no clear portrait of her, The image of the wooden house, the familiar bougainvillea trellis, and the frail figure in an old silk outfit hit him like a wave of memory. He scrolled down, eyes scanning the words more closely. Each sentence struck like a bell. The dog named Rex attacked and subdued one of the intruders, protecting Mrs. Lay, who had adopted him from a rescue center. The apartment suddenly felt impossibly quiet. The man's name was Ben, and he was Mrs. Lee's only son. He sat frozen. How long had it been since he last called home? 2 years. 3, he had made excuses, worked time zones. What is there to say anyway? But deep down, Ben knew he'd been avoiding it. Every time he thought of his mother, he remembered the arguments before he left. He'd accused her of being too closed off, of not understanding his choices. She had accused him of staying away too long, of forgetting his roots. Calls became fewer, then shorter. Eventually, they stopped altogether. Until today, Ben opened his contacts. Her number was still saved, though he'd hovered over the delete option more than once. He pressed call back in Vietnam. In the kitchen of the wooden house, a dusty landline phone rang unexpectedly. Mrs. Lee flinched, heart skipping. A strange number blinked on the screen, but in small letters it read, Swan, Canada. Her hands trembled. She picked up, "Cho, hello." From the other end, a man's voice, thick with emotion, replied, "Mom, are you okay?" Mrs. Lee couldn't believe her ears. That simple question, one she hadn't heard in so long, cracked something open inside her. "Ben, is that you?" she gasped. There was a pause followed by a shaky breath. "I'm sorry, I just saw the news. I didn't know. I didn't know you were in danger." "It's okay, I'm all right now," she said softly, tears forming. "Rex protected me. He's such a good boy. I saw it all. I never thought you'd keep a dog like that. You're stronger than I imagined. No love. I'm not strong. But Rex, he taught me how to be." There was silence, only the wind outside brushed against the bougainvillea, and the sound of 2 people breathing a world apart, yet closer than they'd been in years. "I miss you," Ben whispered. Mrs. Lay clutched the phone tightly. "I miss you too. Every single day." The call lasted nearly an hour. They didn't dwell on the past. No blame, no justifications, just stories. Small, honest moments shared like old times. How Rex had eaten 2 bowls of rice that morning. How she'd replanted the old flower bush he used to play near as a boy. How he'd gotten home late from work one night craving her soup. And in each sentence, something between them slowly began to heal. A few days later, Ben sent a gift, a framed photo of himself standing in the snow with a handwritten note beneath it. "No matter how far I go, I'll always be your son." Along with it came a message. "I'm arranging to come back to Vietnam to visit you. Please wait for me, Mom." Mrs. Lee placed the photo on the altar right next to the old family portrait. Beneath it, Rex lay stretched out, his head resting on her foot. Eyes calm and steady as always. "You see that, Rex?" she whispered. "We've called our Ben home." Rex didn't respond with words, just a soft, deliberate wag of the tail. It said enough. It wasn't the noisy spotlight of social media. It wasn't the headlines or the viral pictures. It was a single phone call after years of silence, a heartfelt apology, a quiet forgiveness. And one old dog, once believed to have no purpose left, became the bridge that brought a family back together. Mrs. Lee sat on the porch, a cup of tea gone cold in her hands, but her heart had never felt warmer. Rex lay beside her, peaceful like the sunlight after a storm. That morning, golden light filtered through the bougainvillea draping her porch. As she prepared breakfast, the sound of a car stopping at the gate startled her. She stepped outside, her heart racing. The gate creaked open, and she could hardly believe her eyes. It was Ben, her son. He was no longer the little boy who once chased butterflies around the garden, nor the silent man who had walked away from home. Standing before her was a grown man, red-eyed, suitcase in hand, backpack slung over one shoulder, and in his arms a fluffy white puppy, as soft and bright as snow. Before she could speak, he pulled her into a tight embrace, a hug she thought she'd lost forever now, warm, firm, and full of all the unspoken years. "Mom, I'm home," Ben whispered, his voice cracking his head, leaning into her shoulder. Mrs. Lee cradled him like she used to, tears streaming down her face. "I never thought I'd see the day you'd be standing here." At our gate, next to them, Rex stood quietly, his deep eyes steady, his tail gently wagging. He stepped closer, sniffed the man in front of him, and seemed to nod as if to say, "Yes, this is the one you must be." Rex, Ben said softly, kneeling and holding out a hand. Rex sniffed him again, then leaned his head gently into the outstretched palm. No barking, no suspicion, Just a soft touch, a gesture of welcome. Hours later, when the excitement had settled, the little family of three, Mrs. Levin and Rex sat together on the porch. The puppy, now named May, frolicked in the garden, chasing leaves and discovering blades of grass as if they were entire worlds. May is my gift to Rex, Ben explained, eyes still watching the puppy. He protected you, Mom, I thought. He deserves a friend. Mrs. Lee smiled and stroked Rex's back. He sat as always calm and composed, but in his eyes now was something different. Peace, like a burden, had finally been lifted. A few days later, they all went for a walk in the park. Something Mrs. Lee hadn't imagined doing since her husband passed and her son left home. She walked slowly, her hand resting on Ben's arm. Rex trotted beside them, and May bounded ahead, tail wagging joyfully. Passers-by turned and smiled at the gentle older woman and her two dogs walking as if they'd always belonged together. She turned to her son, her voice trembling with emotion. You know, I never thought I'd get to walk like this again, with my whole family. Ben squeezed her hand. We left you alone for too long. It's okay, my son, she replied, her eyes shimmering, because we're here now. And it's not too late, is it? Rex paused, glancing up at the two of them, ears flicking, eyes wise. Mrs. Lee bent down and gently stroked his head. You know what, Rex? Thanks to you, I'm not lonely anymore. And if Rex could speak, perhaps he would have answered. You were never truly alone. I was always here waiting for your call. The weeks that followed passed in quiet joy. Ben repaired the roof, repainted the old fence, and installed lights on the porch. In the mornings, he cooked with his mother, tended to the garden, and played with May. In the evenings, the three of them sat and flipped through old photo albums, and for the first time in many years, the memories didn't sting. They simply filled her with gratitude. On a breezy afternoon, Mrs. Lee sat on the stone bench in her yard writing another letter. But this time it wasn't for her son. This letter was for herself. Thank you for not giving up hope. Thank you for reaching out to a soul the world had nearly forgotten. Because of that, a miracle found its way back. She folded the letter gently and tucked it into her journal. Then she turned to look at Rex lying beside her. His eyes no longer tense, but calm and warm, as if he were silently saying, I've fulfilled my mission. The greatest lesson Mrs. Lee learned throughout this journey didn't come from books or from anyone she knew. It came from a dog once rejected, deemed past his prime, yet still loyal enough to protect, patient enough to mend, and loving enough to bring a broken family back together. The story of Mrs. Rex and Ben isn't a fairy tale. There was no magic wand, no grand miracle. But the return, the forgiveness, and the silent bond they shared, that was the real miracle. One that any lonely heart can still believe in. Thank you for listening to this story. If you too believe in the magic of loyalty and family, don't forget to share this with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the next heartwarming journey. We'll be back with more stories that touch the soul, where every dog and every person deserves a second chance.